Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. Fear and Greed is approaching its third birthday and for the last couple of years has been firmly in the startup phase of its existence. But as we grow, the focus shifts from startup to scale up. It begs the question, how do we do it? How do you take an existing business and get it to that next level? Annie Cavalier is the Director of Strategic Growth Programs at Stone & Chalk, Australia's largest innovation community. Annie will also be a judge in the startup component of the Accounting Business Expo this week in Melbourne, which is a supporter of this podcast. Annie, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Hi, Sean. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problems. In a nutshell, tell me the Stone & Chalk story.
Okay, well, Stone & Chalk was created in 2015. It was born out of a Committee for Sydney commissioned a report, which was authored by KPMG, looking at unlocking Sydney's fintech potential. They did a comparative view globally, and there was a series of recommendations that were put forward in that report. And one of them was that a center of gravity needed to be established, and it needed to be independent, not-for-profit, and industry-led, which is where our model comes from. So that was back in 2015. We have since become Australia's largest innovation community. So we've broadened out beyond fintech into all emerging tech sectors. Everything from cybersecurity, prop tech, Web3, AI, etc.
So you've broadened out that. And what are the services you're offering?
Yeah, so what we foster is a community of founders, mentors, experts, corporates, partners, and collaborators to help entrepreneurs and businesses to build, grow, and commercialize their ideas. So ensuring that essentially they have everything that they need to adapt and thrive in an age of technological disruption. So some of the things that we offer include community and infrastructure, mentoring and advice, capital and funding, customer markets access, people and culture, global expansion, office space, and a whole range of connections to industry, government, potential customers.
Okay, so let's look at the startups first. Where do has the last decade or so been a golden age of startups? Was COVID a disaster for startups or actually a boom for startups? From your viewpoint at Stone & Chalk, how do you think the startup community in Australia is travelling?
Oh, look, I think we're definitely seeing that maturity really come to light. I was involved in setting up the first co-work space in Australia way back in 2008. And so we have come an extremely long way since then. In terms of at Stone & Chalk, we have over 600 residents across our different businesses. And whilst COVID was definitely a trying period, I think startups have come out really much more resilient. There's increased diversity, in terms of gender, race, ethnicity, the rise of new technologies such as AI, blockchain, Internet of Things. It's opened up a whole world of new opportunities for founders to create some really innovative solutions to existing problems. The funding landscape has evolved over the years, and there's been a real rise of number of VC firms, angel investors, crowdfunding platforms, and other non-dilutive forms of funding as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so really, it's an industry that's just vastly growing and evolving, every year.
So is there some sort of common characteristics in startups? Do you look at a startup and say, yep, you've got it, you'll make it? Or is vice versa, you look at something and say, you've got no chance? Is there some characteristic that stands out with startups?
Oh, look, there's many. I suppose a couple that I would call out are founder passion. So a real passion to solving a particular problem. Typically, a founder will have a deep expertise in that problem and in solving that particular thing. And just a commitment to, just keep sort of pushing through. Founders need a lot of resilience. There's just so many obstacles along the way. So, yeah, real clear vision, a path to get there, goals and objectives. And obviously that will change along the way, but a real commitment to sort of pushing through and solving that problem and bringing it to market.
Stay with me, Annie. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is Annie Cavalier, Director of Strategic Growth Programs at Stone & Chalk. Okay, so during the introduction, I talked about scale-ups and how Fear and Greed is we've been going 3 years. We're looking at scaling up. What is it? How are the needs of scale-ups different to those of a startup?
Yeah, so I guess a scale up essentially it's like when a founder's business is now looking for new markets and increasing the diversity of their product types. So it's about expansion and growth. So typically, scale up, they've basically moved from working in the business to working on the business. So they've established clear pathways to market. They've solidified a consistent revenue stream or streams. They've got a scalable business model, but there's still a long to do list. They're thinking about things like a board of directors, hiring a board of directors, ongoing PR exposure, planning and forecasting for their investors, international expansion, infrastructure to scale. They need to create policies, recruit senior staff, those sorts of things.
Is it, I mean, it's a very different mindset, I would imagine, though, to actually starting up the business, particularly if you have a passion for whatever product or service you're providing. Being able to do all those things you're talking about is a different skill set.
Absolutely. And founders have to wear, all the hats as they grow their business. So sometimes a company gets to a certain size and the founder realizes that they're just not the best person to take that organization forward or to continue taking that organization forward. So sometimes those tough decisions do need to be made. But obviously, there's a lot of learning along that growth journey. And so founders do become quite adept across lots of different areas as they scale the business.
Is Australia good at startups, do you think?
Absolutely. We have some of the most innovative companies coming out of Australia. I don't have the stats, but the number of unicorns that are coming out of Australia we are absolutely punching well above our weight.
Okay. And are there certain areas that we're better? I mean, technology is very broad. There seems to be a lot of fintechs out there, for example. I know Stone and Chalk goes well beyond fintechs, but there seems to be a lot of fintechs out there. Are there certain sectors that we're just particularly good at?
Look, I think each geography has its specific sectors that they are doubling down on. So, for example, in Sydney, it was created as a fintech innovation hub. So, we definitely have a lot of fintech in Sydney. Same with Melbourne. Melbourne is very good at fintech, life sciences, sports tech, and agriculture as well, ag tech.
Yeah.
And in South Australia, the focus is on space tech, defense tech, and AI. So again, each geography has their particular strengths, and those respective governments are doing what they can to support and bolster those sectors.
Yeah. So how important is the role of government in this? And there's no value judgment in terms of what governments are doing now, but just the role of government needed to, establish an environment in South Australia where defence capabilities are part of it. The medical capabilities in Brisbane, the fintechs in Melbourne and Sydney. How important is government?
Look, I would say government is incredibly important to lay down that infrastructure and those rails that will provide the support for the startups to grow. So any geography that we go into, we typically partner with government initially to really foster that early stage of the ecosystem and until that maturity gets built up. So absolutely, government is critical to the success of its startup industry.
Okay, so what now for Stone and Chalk? You keep doing what you're doing, but Stone and Chalk itself has been very successful and it's working with increasingly larger corporates, which I suppose is a function when you start up with them, you go on the journey with them. What next for Stone and Chalk?
Our mission is to transform Australia into a sustainable, technology-driven economy. So we're here to support startups, scale-ups, corporations, and government at every stage of their innovation journey. And so for us, it's really important to be national and international. So there's various conversations happening. We're opening new startup and scale-up hubs across the country to meet the evolving needs of our thriving community.
Fantastic, Annie. Thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
That was Annie Cavalier, Director of Strategic Growth Programs at Stone and Chalk. Annie will be at the Accounting Business Expo in Melbourne this week, which is a supporter of this podcast. Just search Accounting Business Expo for more. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.